Hello, and welcome to the Bloodstream. I'm very excited to have on someone who I've been a big fan of for a long time, and who I know a lot of you have been fans of for a long time as well. So, before I bring on tonight's guest, just a couple of things. Um, we will have time toward the end of, if we have time toward the end of the night, we'll do a little Q&A. If you want to jump on the stream and ask Mr. Morgan a question, or if you want to post your questions in the chat, the best way to do that is through a super chat. That way, YouTube keeps track of them. I can refer to them very easily later without having to scroll back through tons and tons of chats. So, and of course, that supports the channel. So, I'll make that link. The link is already available to my patrons and my channel members, and I'll make the link available to everybody else toward the end of tonight's stream. So just a couple of quick shout outs. Nico, thank you, sir, for the $10 super chat. Hey, Piz, been waiting for this night since you announced it. Another classic stream awaits. Yes. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Darren, thank you for becoming a channel member. I appreciate that very much. And hello to everybody else who's hanging out with us in the chat. I see you out there, Sean and Orman, Dave, RJ, J Dobbs, Dunwick, Mike, Michael Sullivan, AJ, Distorted Visions. Hope you guys are all having a great night. So without further ado, my guest on this Bloodstream is a writer, a producer, a director, and an actor who's had a hand in not only one of the most beloved long-running television series of all time, but a long-running and beloved horror movie franchise as well. My guest tonight is Glen Morgan. How you doing, sir?
I'm so happy, relieved I'm not high, because that intro I would have been running out the back. What's going on? Yeah, excellent.
I'm glad you're treating this seriously. You're a professional.
Yeah.
You chose not to get high before.
Yeah, no, that's right. Hello to everybody. I have I don't know. I think I have my son in Pennsylvania, and I have friends in Ohio, and my son in Oregon, and I'm like, I sent the link, and the Valley, Orange County. So
okay, awesome.
Welcome to everybody.
You got people from all over the place possibly showing up. Yeah. Nice. Well, that's awesome.
And man, between you and me, I honored Kentucky. I kept my word.
You did. You kept your word. You're drinking a little bit of bourbon tonight. Paying tribute to the
I have not had it. I'll wait till we're done.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out to do this. I know you don't do a whole lot of interviews, so I really appreciate you taking the time out to come on and talk to me.
No, it's my pleasure. Those guys, Justin, they do, like, they put out a really nice home video of Willard and stuff like that, and they do good work. So they highly recommended you.
Well, yes, and big shout out to Justin Beam, who helped to connect us. So if you're watching, Justin, thank you very much for the assist. Appreciate that very much. So as I said, you're a writer, you're a director, you're a producer, and an actor. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, we can forget that.
No, let's don't.
Easy to forget that one. Yeah,
we're going to talk all about that. But I mean, clearly, you're a busy man. Do you? And I know you're also a big movie lover. Do you find time to watch movies? Have you seen anything good lately?
I just think Zone of Interest is a masterpiece. I love that, and all that stuff. I thought the Scorsese, the Flower Moon, all that. I thought that was great. And we're in Los Angeles, and Kristen and I go a lot to the motion picture, the Academy of Motion Picture Museum. And last week they had a presentation with 70 minutes of trailers.
Oh wow!
And the theme was they were trailers that broke the fourth wall. So it was like they spoke to the audience, or you saw some behind the scenes. And in the middle, they showed Rock and Roll High School, which our friend Rich Willie wrote, and everybody was like, the Ramones. It went crazy. It was great. So
I love Rock and Roll High School. Ethan Morgan, does that name ring a bell?
Oh no, get him out of here. That's a troll.
Get him out of
That's my son. It's a Penn State, and he's getting a doctorate in mad science tree.
Wow.
Take
Oh, so you raised a smart kid.
Yeah, I don't know. He's probably not mine. I don't know. He is a very smart kid, and all of us are like, we're like a whole film family. Everybody's got their things that they like, and we talk about this stuff together. So it's wonderful.
Well, I know you grew up a big, you were a big movie fan. Has the now that you're in the industry and you've seen Oz behind the curtain, so to speak, has it taken any of the magic away from movies?
Absolutely. To the point where like I really like astronomy and music, and I've stopped how much I can know about it, so that those two topics don't lose magic, because Hollywood has a lot of brutality. But
Yeah.
that being said, when you've done it and you see a zone of interest or a Killers of the Flower Moon, it just makes it all the more like overwhelming and powerful when you see it done so masterfully.
Yeah. Well, what were did you want to get into the business when did you decide you wanted to get into the business? Was there a particular movie that made you go, yeah, that's what I want to do?
Well, I grew up in central New York, in Syracuse, New York, and they had on WSYR Channel 9, I don't remember, the Monster Movie Matinee, and they had this long on Saturday afternoons, and they had the long introduction with the creepy music, and they had the weatherman was Igor Opal and all the stuff, and they would show the Universal Dracula, Frankenstein, the classics, and I just would not. That's where I fell in love. And then my uncles would show us the Marx Brothers, and that was my other love, and all the Bugs Bunny stuff. And then later Hitchcock. But you're in Syracuse, New York, and you're like, I have no chance of getting there. And then my dad actually said, I was watching Twilight Zone, and Rod Serling's doing his narration. He's like, that guy's from here. I'm like, what? And because Rod Serling was from central New York and Binghamton, and I don't really know. I think my mom and dad had shoveled their last driveway and moved to San Diego. So just 2 hours south of Los Angeles, and then that's where I met Jim Wong, who will be mentioned, I'm sure, and this time. And at that time, his brother had gone to Loyola Marymount, and they had a film program that would take any idiot. I couldn't get into USC or UCLA, and so Jim and I went there and studied film, and that's how that went. So, yeah, sorry, The Wolfman, Dracula, The Birds, Psycho, Duck Soup, and all that. I think that comedy and horror are very closely related.
Oh, of course, yeah, and it's very closely related in your work as well. Yeah, and I see a little bit of Hitchcock in there, especially in Willard. I see a lot of
a little bit. I just ripped it off.
I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think he was influenced by Clouseau in France, but
everybody's influenced by somebody. It just depends on how you use that influence, how you make that you what's the word I'm looking for? You use that influence to shape your own vision of whatever you're trying to do.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm listening to this podcast, The History of Rock and Roll in 500 Songs, and it's just fascinating how Sonny and Cher influenced the Byrds, and this guitar solo in Rock Around the Clock is just a rip-off from a guitar solo in an unknown song 3 years ago, and how creativity is just it's a really exciting thing to be involved in.
Well, was music a big part of you growing up as well as movies? Because I've always thought your Black Christmas had a very punk rock kind of edge to it.
Thank you. I wish I had more money. I mean, there was other songs that I wanted, and Man with the Bag. I mean, I was like listening to Christmas music. I think I was writing it in March, and I was like listening to Christmas music. My clock was all off because Christmas music really creepy to me. And
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah.
yeah, no, I think that was like the first time to me seeing that as like and the birds, Tippy Hendren goes outside the schoolyard to get, and the kids are like singing this Scottish folk song that makes my wife insane. And then the birds gather and stuff. And so how that music escalated the tension, that was the first time I saw it. And, you know, Jim and I have done that a lot.
Well, you mentioned James Wong, of course, who's, you know, somebody you collaborated with on many, many projects. You guys first linked up it was a high school, right?
El Cajon, California.
Okay.
Home of the Braves. It's the last time I'll ever admit it.
And you guys were like, you were in a writing class and you were critiquing each other's work.
Yeah, we're in honors English, and then he went to Loyola as an engineering major, and I went as a film major. And then we went to see Apocalypse Now at the Cinerama Dome. You know, you had to get tickets, and there was no credits. It was just, I'd never been anything like that. It was just the lights go down, a Cinerama Dome. If you've never been there, the helicopters, and both our lives are like completely changed. I think Jim came out of that movie and he's like, I'm a cinematographer now. And later that semester, he changed his major.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're going to be influenced by any movie to get into the business, that's it, right? You know,
that movie and that theater and that time, just extraordinary. It still is. Yeah. And then, but we worked with a lot of people that have helped both Jim and I, like Tom Wright did second unit stuff on Final Destination, and he did Hitchcock's storyboards on Family Plot. And Tom, man, you know what? They're downstairs. He did the concept art for Apocalypse Now. So he gave me color Xerox of the helicopters coming over the waves. This is all Tom. The originals are up in the Coppola Winery. And then, you know, we worked extensively with the great Shirley Walker until she passed away. And she had played the keyboard on Apocalypse Now. And, you know, we did a movie with Charlie Sheen, who was involved, you know, because his father was there. And so I had a lot of people later that we had worked with that had worked on that movie.
Yeah. And speaking of the movie with Charlie Sheen, you received your first writing credit in for 1985's The Boys Next Door, which of course you co-wrote with James Wong. What's the creative process like when you work with him? Are you still critiquing each other's work, or what's that process like?
No, that's why we broke up. No, that was all, you know, back then you kind of were dumb and just like, okay, sat at a kitchen table and go, what's the next line? And it was just brutal. And then later we learned to go, you take that act and you take this, or on certain project like Space Above and Beyond, he was doing a lot of production and I was writing. So you learn how to split it up.
Okay. Because, you know, so they say some guys are the big picture guys. Some guys are like, you know, they tell you the, you know, whatever.
Neither one of us are any picture. I don't know how we got anything done.
One guy talks it out, the other guy types it out, you know, then they switch or they throw ideas at each other.
Yeah.
Whatever. I understand that The Boys Next Door didn't quite turn out the way that you had intended. Was it kind of was that movie a crash course in Hollywood, how the industry works?
Yeah. Still a different time. I mean, and it's hard to talk about that, to be honest, about my reaction to that movie, because I really respect and like Penelope Spheris, who directed it. You know, I think Suburbia is great, and Decline of Western Civilization had you know, that was my world at the time. And you know, I had written that really kind of inspired by In Cold Blood, the movie and the book, but you know, the movie is just like, that's what I had in mind. And then at the time, I thought I thought somebody was messing with my head, is that Crispin Glover had found the script, or an agent or somebody gave it to him, and he went crazy And then he liked it and called Nicolas Cage, who was filming Birdie in Philadelphia, and read him the whole script over the phone. And I'm like, nobody does that. And then later when I did Willard, he brought it up, and I'm like, is that true? He's like, oh yeah, no, I remember that movie. And then Jim and I had gone to Sandy Howard and said, Crispin Glover and Nicolas Cage. And he's like, I have no idea who they are. And so we got Charlie and Max, who are really terrific actors, but just miscast in my book.
Yeah, that movie's, I mean, I've seen it. I rented it years ago, and I rewatched about half of it last week.
Half of it, yeah. Oh,
well,
I thought half of it in the first time.
No. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of get to if my memory served me well about that movie. It just there's just something kind of off about it.
I think it's, I mean, if every writer has read the William Goldman Adventures in the Screen Trade, and he said that George Roy Hill said 80% is script and casting, and I really have come to believe that that's true. And I think that maybe the script wasn't that good on that movie, but the casting was not correct. And again, Apocalypse Now, we went to a preview, and there in the front row was Martin Sheen. And Jim and I were like, Martin Sheen is going to watch our movie. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And then when that movie was over, he was up. I think he's in the theater lighting a cigarette. A guy who had a heart attack making Apocalypse Now. And we're like, we drove him back to smoking. So,
yeah. Wow. Well, let's now I'm just thinking of Crispin Glover and Nick Cage in those roles.
It would have been.
Can you imagine? Like who would like I imagine Crispin Glover as the Charlie Sheen role.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Cage. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That would have been something. Crispin Glover will probably talk about here in a little while also.
Okay.
His name might pop up again.
It's a good topic.
Yes. Oh God, I love Crispin Glover. But I want to talk about your very first starring vehicle in 1986's Trick or Treat.
If you haven't seen it, turn off this podcast and find it now.
It's going to be coming out on 4K here very soon.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Again, that was and I think just gets into questions younger writers have. Patricia Witcher, who Jim and I had gone to Loyola with, who now is a huge line producer. I think she did the Thor movies and stuff. She got a job at Sandy Howard, and then she just like brought us all in to be runners. And Jim and I were editing trailers for foreign release, and blah, blah, blah. And so Sandy had all these people working there. It was kind of pretty great. And then we found this script sitting around and asked if we could rewrite it. But one of his main guys were Michael Murphy and Joel Soissons, who then went on to De Laurentiis, and I think they produced Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and maybe the second Nightmare or third Nightmare on Elm Street. Really great friends of ours, and they had this movie Trick or Treat that they were doing for Dino De Laurentiis. And they came to us, to Jim and I, and said, could you do a polish? I don't know why, thinking that we knew how young kids slang or something. So Jim and I just did the dialogue. We didn't change anything in the story. And they're all going to go to North Carolina and film. And the actor who I think is I don't know his name. Sorry. The guy who played the brother in E.T.
Oh, that's right. I heard that.
He dropped out. That's what I'm told. And then they were like, gotta go. And our friend Dave Witz, who's also a huge line producer, who had done some production on Dunkirk, I know. And he said, oh, you should read Glenn, because, we all acted in each other's movies in college. And I read for Charlie, and they were desperate.
Well, look, man, I think you did a great job.
Yeah, thank you. I think.
And I was going to ask you which came first, the acting gig or the writing gig, but
writing.
You answered that. So what did you bring to the script that wasn't there? I mean, it's a heavy metal slasher,
I don't know. I love those guys, and I just like my problem with the movie. Again, I have so much. They're all my friends. I get a big kick out of the fact that out of everything I've done, it's the only movie that plays at Tarantino's theater. And I'm like, what? And But you know, I don't understand why Sammy Kerr is killing kids. You know what I mean? Like, you think he'd be going after authority figures who don't like rock and roll or something like that, and to the kids, like, you have to defend the authority figures, and you know, that was just like, shut up. And I'm like, okay, and then just did my part.
Okay. And look, I love Joel Swisson. I would love to
Yeah,
actually have him on the channel. He's done.
yeah,
I mean, he's had a hand in so many great movies.
he's a great writer.
So yeah, I've heard nothing but
Yeah.
good things about
Hmm.
him. So, but I mean, that had to be a fun set to be on. Please tell me you
Oh
have
no, it was the
Oz.
best. It was one of the best prior to getting remarried. That's the best 6 weeks or whatever it was in my life, because I was their friend. I don't know if I was in the union, and they go, "Hey, we're gonna, you know, make you stay later. Hey, we're gonna push you till tomorrow." And like, other actors go, "How do you do this to me?" Blah 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 blah, blah. And then they have to pay them a fine. But me, they could boss around. I didn't care. And you know, I made
Well,
friends with everybody, and I can't go on enough about so much of what I learned about on-set etiquette. It was all from
mhm,
Charlie Martin Smith, and I just think the world of him. I was honored he did. I hired him to do a couple episodes of Space Above and Beyond, and I think he lives in Vancouver. I'm, you know, been out of touch with him, but he just said I owe him a lot.
wow. Please tell me you've got Ozzy and Gene Simmons stories.
Um, I flew to North Carolina first class. That's the first time ever. Like, come on, that gig was the best. And I'm sitting there in the first class by the window, and like, you know, my mind is blown. This is great. And then who comes in and sits next to me is Gene Simmons, who maybe I didn't really know without the makeup at first. And, you know, like, I'm sorry, you know, X and the Ramones and the Clash are my band. So I never really like
Right.
a Kiss guy. And he just complained. He was like really obnoxious. And he was like, "You want more cookies?" Like, you know, bugging the flight attendants. And then we had he had a Rolling Stone magazine, and Top Gun was coming out. And he's like, you know, there's a big picture of Tom Cruise. He's like, "Look at this guy. Look at this guy trying so hard." And I'm like, you got famous blowing fire out your, shut up.
Mhm.
And that was that. That was crazy. You know, he wasn't mean or anything, but and then Ozzy Osbourne, I thought was just like a proper English gentleman. It was weird because at that time, he was being sued because his families had claimed that someone had taken their life by listening to it. And that was like tense on set.
Mhm.
But I was like, really, I think that's a thing in Hollywood that I was like, oh, people aren't who you think they are.
Right.
Because he's like what we now know Ozzy Osbourne to be. Back then, you thought he was Satan,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and he was just like really wonderful, you know, shaky. Kind of, I liked him a lot.
That's awesome. And
Yeah,
that's exactly how I would expect Gene Simmons to be. So,
you know, I don't. Yeah, it's whatever. You know, he wasn't beating anybody up or anything, but it was kind of, he was a little rude. But that's my.
well, and look, you know, I mean, Trick or Treat has got a big cult following. I mean, of course, it's coming out on 4K soon, so I mean, clearly there's a calling for it, and there's love here for it in the chat. I mean, Eric says it's a classic. Dave says it's his favorite horror movie of all
Oh,
time.
Dave, you got to watch more movies. You
And I'm
know,
sure.
Doug Savant, Jim and I used him. I think he's in the one, and they used him along the way. And there was a stunt guy who's in the movie, Denny Pierce. We used him on 21 Jump Street. And, you know, I was really good friends with so many of those people, and remain so.
That's awesome. I mean, did you go out for any other acting gigs? Did you give it a shot or what?
Yeah, I gave it a shot, like for a minute. And then I was like, went to this audition, and it was like for a sitcom. And the guy kept going, "Well, you got to be broader and like do it bigger." And then we, "Hey, I'll be home for lunch." No, you're not Brando. You got to be bigger. I'm like, bigger. And then I just got, finally, I'm like, if I get any bigger, I'm going to break into a cartoon. And he's like, "No bigger." And I'm like, I've had it. I can't. It's, you know, and all my actor friends, And my wife, that's hell.
So
Auditioning is hell.
so you have a little soft spot in your heart for actors.
Oh yeah, I mean what they go through. I mean, you know, there was similar. They got audition and writers got a pitch. You know, it's a similar headache.
Yeah, got to get used to a lot of rejection.
Yep.
So, and you mentioned Kristen, your beautiful wife, Kristen Cloak,
Mm-hmm.
Actress. Also,
Yeah, I think she's watching, but she's heard it all.
Okay.
She's gonna go in and go, "You said this name wrong."
she's gonna critique you later.
Yeah.
So I want to jump around a little when it comes to your work in television, because you've worn a lot of hats when it comes to your work in television, and because it's such a significant part of your body of work, and I think just culturally significant as well. How did you segue from writing features into writing for shows like Night Watch and Booker and 21 Jump Street?
You know, that's the nature of Hollywood, I suppose, is that the Boys Next Door came out and you're hot and it doesn't do anything, and then you're not. And, you know, Jim and I went 5 years of, you know, his mom had a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant down in El Cajon, and she made these great, I'm sorry, I don't know the name. They're like triangular, was rice wrapped in these leaves, and they were delicious. But that's all we ate for 5 years, that and macaroni and cheese. I can't eat them still. I'm like, that just tastes like poverty. And it was like, man, I'm done, you know. And then there was a strike. There was a long strike in '88, and back then it was like you were either a movie guy or a TV guy. The paths didn't cross. And Joe, you got to watch more movies.
A lot of love for it, a chance.
Yeah, and so I worked in a like pop art gallery in Santa Monica Mall, shipping stuff. And then when that was hell, and then when the strike was over, they go, "You want to go write for TV?" And we're like, "Yep." And we got that job on Night Watch, which was a ripoff of 21 Jump Street.
And then you got on 21 Jump Street.
Right. My agent says, when Night Watch is canceled, you're going on to 21 Jump Street. And I was like, no, because I thought I hadn't seen Jump Street, and I thought it was like a, what do you call it, beefcake? That's how they sold it. And that's what Depp and Peter DeLuise hated. And so that's what I thought it was. And then when I saw some episodes and saw how really dicey they were about social issues, I was like, I'm on board. And we really, there's a lot of stuff there that I'm proud of.
Yeah. So what's funny, if you weren't around in the late 80s and early 90s, like 21 Jump Street was a
like all of your audience.
No, there's some people that have been around. Right. So 21 Jump Street was a huge, that was really that was the launching pad for Johnny Depp, really.
And Fox. Fox had a lot of things that didn't do well. And then Jump Street, and I was on 21 Jump Street, and Jim and I met with this guy, Robert Greenblatt, who went on to produce 6 Feet Under, and then he ran NBC for a while. And I remember being in his little tiny office going, and I said, "Oh, I can't wait to see that Simpsons show." And he's like, "You think it'll work?" I'm like, "Yeah, can't wait." So that's how far back.
Wow. Yeah. Gosh, the Simpsons, holy Lord. Yeah. You've also produced a lot of television. How does producing television, episodic television, differ from a feature film?
A feature film, you basically don't have anything due. You don't, like, so if you're on TV, and back in those days, 21 Jump Street was 24 episodes. The last round X-Files, both of those were 10, and that seems like a lot now. So there's no way you can have all 24 done by the time you start shooting. And so when you're shooting show 10, you're probably writing show 11 or 12. And so you're on set or you're dealing with those problems, but you got to get back and deal with that. And a feature, although you're making adjustments all the way, you're kind of done with the writing and the script in a way. So to me, that's the main difference. And you just have more room to play and more time to do it.
Okay. what is a showrunner? That's a term that kind of fascinates me. What's the duties of a showrunner?
This is when I'm like old. And I go, when I was a kid, they called it executive producer. I don't know where showrunner came out. I don't know. Writers' rooms were always for comedy because they'd sit around and do jokes, and the plot is usually thinner, and they just like do jokes, and then they read it, and then they go on stage and doing that. The showrunner, does it all. It starts from, well, you may or may not pitch your original idea. Like Chris Carter, for example, is like, here's this idea. He believes and she doesn't, and UFOs and blah, 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 blah. And then he, and maybe if you have some good executives, go, well, I know this writer. And so Peter Ross say he knows Gemini, and some other people had worked with Howard Gordon and Alex Gonza. So you bring in the writers. And then you go get your cinematographer and then your line producer, and then you start hiring crew. A lot of time it's people that you know, and those people all have to be on the same path, as you. If you're on a show like the X-Files, you're down here in LA, but your production designer making the sets and everybody getting ready is up in Vancouver, and you didn't have video conferencing then. You would just go up there, and you just have to have a like-mindedness. So you got to handle all that. And then every week you got casting. You got to make sure that, well, this episode is $1 million over budget. Well, 2 episodes from now, we're going to be under $500,000. And they go, okay. And so it's just all that. And it's really, I'm not much of a director, but show running is so much harder than feature filmmaking. Okay. I'm not Christopher Nolan, who's blowing up atom bombs and Scorsese building cities in the Oklahoma. Show running is really tough. It's just constant. It's really political, very political.
Okay, a lot of problem solving, but political underlings as well, right?
Yep. And you've got your writers got a great, exciting idea, and then the network. You got a studio and then a network, and they hate it and they want something. Then your writers hate it, and you're always in the middle. It's a tough gig.
So you'd much rather produce than show run?
Well, show running is producing.
Okay, so it's kind of a little
bit. You're
like
you're the top producer. So when you watch the credits,
the executive producer is the showrunner.
The last executive producer, because there's hundreds of them now. The last executive producer you see before the writer or the director, that's the showrunner mostly.
Okay. I see. Well, you mentioned the writer's room. Take us on a tour of the writer's room. The way I see it is, it's a group of people in a room.
It's crying.
There's
sad, Adderall, pizza.
I was going to say coffee, donuts, cigarette smoking.
You know what? Not anymore.
A whiteboard, and somebody goes, "Okay, season 2, what do you got?"
Well, at Cannell and Jump Street, we began with index cards. And so, especially if you're a team, you can have like, whatever. Mulder sees an alien, and that's their first beat. And then you go, Scully says it wasn't an alien. And that's your second beat. And you just go through that, acts 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can both look at it and you go, well, what if that was over here? Or what was that was over here? And you go, up. The whole show is in front of you, and then you go write it. So that's how we worked. But you're right, people have whiteboards, but I just I feel like you got to commit to a beat if you're going to write it on a card.
Yeah. See, and I've seen that in like behind the scenes stuff, like the cards on the board. I had no idea that's kind of what those were plot points. Those were beats that, you just kind of.
Right. If you're seeing the behind the scenes in a variety show or a comedy show, it might be skits, ideas, one-liners, blah blah blah. But that's how we did it.
Yeah. Well, the X-Files was a phenomenon. It was for me. It was the very first appointment television show. Like I think it was like 9 p.m. on Fox.
That's because you're too young. MASH or The Honeymooners or Milton Berle is the first appointment. You know?
For me, it was the X-Files.
Okay.
If it
All right.
if it was 9 p.m., I think it was it Friday it came on,
Yep.
or
Initially, it was Friday, and then they moved to Sunday.
yeah, I was gonna say it was Friday or Sunday, but yeah,
Mhm.
9 p.m. Fox. My butt was right in front of the television. Um, do you happen to know if applicants for the FBI Academy increased during the X-Files heyday? Because I wanted to be an FBI agent back then. I was like,
I don't know.
I want Scully
I
as
don't
my
have.
partner.
They're not in range here. I have the original Mulder and Scully uh, business cards. The
Oh,
logo is not the FBI because they like no part of
oh,
us.
mhm,
And
mhm.
then they did.
Oh, of
And
course.
then, Chris got tours, and it's like, oh, they were like, what can I do for you? I don't know about that, but what, they talk about this thing, the Scully effect. And, we had recently went to, last May, we went to a fan convention in Minneapolis. And it's just like how many women have become scientists because of the show. And, that's Jillian, but, Jillian didn't go online to research some of the science we used. And so all of us have great pride in the fact that we contributed to inspiring women to be scientists.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure you inspired a lot of people to try to get
Look,
into the academy too. So that's probably what ingratiated you all to the FBI. Like, come on in, come on, yeah, whatever. You want to work, get on the shooting range, whatever. Come on.
I
We've got a real alien back there if you want it. It's from Area 51. You want to go see?
the military has that. FBI had nothing to do with that. But
Well, how did you get caught up in the X Files?
well, Jim and I had worked at Cannell, and the man who ran Cannell, besides Steve Cannell, was this man Peter Roth, who's a legendary executive who has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And he then left Cannell to go work at Fox, and Jim and I were going to go on a romantic comedy that was the show, the big pilot. It was called Moon Over Miami, and it was created and run by Harley Payton, who had been on Twin Peaks, which is about one of my favorite things, let alone TV. And we hit it off, and everything was great. And then our agent, Marty Adelstein, whose company makes One Piece on Netflix, and he's like, well, Peter's insisting that you watch this. And I'm like, oh, what a pain in the ass. And so he's like, well, we'll watch it, and it'll be shitty. And that was just like everything. Close Encounters is just like sacred movie to me. And it was like, oh my God. And we go, what are we going to do? And then, well, we'll go watch a pilot for Moon Over Miami, and that'll be good too. And that'll be our decision. And then we didn't like that too much. We're like, uh-oh. And then we reneged to go on the X-Files, and the head of Columbia TV screamed at me for 20 minutes, but I guess it was worth it.
Yes, I would say it was definitely that little tongue lashing was definitely worth it.
Yeah.
And speaking of, apparently Alex lost his virginity while watching the X Files. So I think you owe Glenn some money.
That's all Chris Carter. I have nothing. That
Well, no,
begins with thanks, Alex.
now I've heard that you and James had a hand in some of the most influential, memorable episodes of that show. So,
That's up to the viewer.
well, in my opinion, you guys, in a lot of people's opinion, you guys had your creative contributions to that show were pretty awesome. So,
Thank you. Everybody was all, how that broke down was that Chris was like, at first the UFO, and Howard and Alex Gonza was like, what the hell is this show? It makes no sense. He just wasn't, he wasn't getting it. And so they ended up doing Weird Science, and Jim and I did Monsters, and Monsters are more fun.
yes,
As the posters behind you can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, monsters it's so many great monsters on the X Files.
Well, I really
So
think
many
that
monsters.
was we had this horrible little office. It was a box that was constructed for the sound editors of the Rookies, on ABC, and it was just like Jim and I were there late at night trying to come up with a story, and we had some ideas, and we knew it had to be a monster. And I remember Jim looking up at this air vent over my desk and going, "What if a guy started crawling out of there right now?" Like, oh yeah. And then you start breaking out the cards, you know.
Oh god, that's a great episode. Oh yeah, I love that episode.
Yeah, that was the actor Doug, who's controversial now. He's phenomenal. He made that stuff. He was just brilliant.
What would you say were your greatest creative contributions to the show? Maybe not particular story, but just maybe like as far as just overall, like just overall creatively.
I don't know. It's hard to really when you're young and you're like cocky and you don't know what lies ahead for you, and everybody's like a little jealous, you might know, of each other, and competitive rather, and so it's hard to think back. I when years have gone by, I really was proud of the character stuff that I had contributed to Scully. That the first lunches we had is if they see an alien or they kiss, the show's over. That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And by show 12, you're like, God, this character is a buzzkill, and she can't see an alien. And so really wrote about my mom's reaction to my grandfather's death. And so everybody's like more open to talking, communicating to those who have gone. And so, from there, and Jillian and I had a good simpatico, and that's what I feel most proud of.
That's awesome. And I think everybody knows Fox now, Fox Network. But at the time, it was still a pretty fledgling network.
Yeah. Late 80s it began.
Yeah. There had to be incredible pressure, both self-imposed and from the network, to keep that train going as long as possible, and to because it was a ratings juggernaut. So
yeah, after we left, we were there for the first year and a half, and then we got our own show, Space Above and Beyond, and we did that, and then we went back, and then and then we did Millennium at the same time, and then ran the show Millennium the second year. So, but it was all they really thought there was a show before X-Files called The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., which Carlton Cuse, who's like went on to do Lost and everything, they were like, that's the hit. So you guys do whatever you want. You're going to be canceled in 13 episodes. So we really got away with a lot. They were like, yeah, whatever. And then when it's a hit and all the executives turn around and want to be a part of it, that's when the fights start.
And were there lots of fights?
There's a couple, but nothing. Like there was an episode that was took place in the Antarctic, and there were these worms who were getting in and making them paranoid, and then the executives were like, it's got to go back to the world. This has to break out in the world. I'm like, in Act 4, how do you stop that? And then we had a huge fight, screaming fight. They hung up on us like, you want your show ruined, go ahead. And then we got away with it, and I'm still friends with those guys. The executives who were screaming at us.
Well, if they can scream at you and you can move on from it and still be friends,
well, they were nice people. They were smart.
What are some of your personal favorite episodes of the X-Files?
There's The Field Where I Die that was written for Kristen, and that's very personal. And Jim did such a great job on the about the Cancer Man. It was like a biography of the Cancer Man. And I just really heavily researched everything in there, and so much about King, who I really admire, and that's my favorite.
Okay. Very cool. If anybody wants to share their favorite X-Files episodes in the chat, please do. That'd be great.
Wait, I don't trust Alex because I don't know which episode he lost his virginity to. That's what I want to know.
Alex, do you remember? I'm going to bet it was the Fluke Man episode or the Fluke Worm episode.
My brother would be very proud.
I'm going to throw that one out there.
Yeah.
That one's a big turn on, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Or what was the episode where the Deliverance style family with the mom under
Yeah,
the bed or whatever?
home.
Yeah, that was a sexy one, as I recall.
Yeah.
That's a great. That's a
That
great.
guy got kicked off of TV.
I was going to say that one. That one was controversial. I recall.
Yeah, I don't. I wrote the script like pretty quickly, and then
Mhm.
I think Chris and I were going to go vacation in England for a week or two or something, and then the head of production, Charlie Goldstein, he called me up. He goes, "You're sick." Then hangs up. I'm like, oh, I didn't really. I thought other things we did were a little bit more, and then it just quite a storm. And again, the woman that played the mother, Karen Conable, if we get around to talk about Black Christmas, she played the mother, and she's the Maurice, the orangutan in Planet of the Apes. That's her.
Oh, I didn't know
The
that.
motion capture and all that, and she's just like a great actress and a really cool person.
Mhm. Let's see. Ben loves the Cops parody. Was that the one with the vampires?
I wasn't there for that. Sorry, Ben.
Hmm.
Is that Vince?
Postmortem
Did Vince write that?
Postmortem Prometheus is an all-time great.
That's Chris Carter's. Yep. I like that.
Tyler,
I like your profile picture.
Tyler loves
Thank you, Tyler.
Ice.
Yeah. That was the one we had the Screaming Festival over. Yeah, no, Beyond the Sea that I mentioned about Scully seeing her father dying. And Rick Milliken, who was a casting person there, said, "Oh, he kind of was." He mentioned Brad Dourif, which Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh yeah,
is just another sacred movie. It's like one of my all-time favorites, and I'm like, and at that time they have what's called top of show. Your guest star is going to get 17,000. That's top of show, and like they don't want to break it because the other show will go, well, the X-Files paid 8,000. So the studio holds their ground at a certain amount. 7,000 was back then. And he had Brad Dourif, and he's Academy Award nominee, and his quote was higher. I think it was around 15,000. And then Jim and I went and said, we'll give our writing fee to have Brad Dourif on the show. And then in Hollywood, if you ever offer your own money, they think you're crazy and you really mean it, and they never take you up on it. They pay. And he really changed. We just started getting all kinds of great actors after that. And Brad, you watch the dailies and just go, who wrote this? Like, he's just phenomenal. He just did a great job.
Yeah. I always loved the episode with Perry Reeves, where like
oh, you're in the minority.
People didn't like that episode.
The vampire episode.
The vampire, yeah, I love that episode.
Oh, we're much despised over that. I know.
But I love that episode.
Yeah,
love
everybody. I know. I think it's maligned too. But
how could you not like that episode?
Don't ask me. It's called 3, and then from then on, I'm like, I'm superstitious about titling things with numbers.
I love that freaking episode. So I don't know what people are saying.
All right, you can ask your listeners.
Is any okay?
They hate it.
Okay, 3. Is anybody thoughts on 3 in the chat? I don't know how you could not like that episode. That was a killer episode.
See, crickets.
I guess. Okay, I don't know. I don't know what y'all saw a different episode than I did. I guess I don't know. But
that's the thing. If you're those of us on the show, and it's an honor to be approached by somebody who goes, I got to tell you my favorite episode of the X-Files, and then you're prepared to go, yes, the mother under the bed. And then when someone comes up with an episode that is hated, I don't know how to handle it.
So. I like 3 better than the mother under the bed. So that's just
wow.
Okay, here we go. We got some love for 3.
Okay,
we got love. We got some love for 3. So we're not alone, Glenn.
I don't see my son chiming in.
All
right.
Okay. All right. I loved Millennium.
Oh, thanks.
Loved Millennium. It was a spinoff of the X-Files, of course, but it had its own flavor. It had its own texture. It didn't last very long, though, unfortunately.
3 years.
Oh, it was 3 years? I thought it was only like 1 or
No,
2.
three, three.
3. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I stand corrected then. Um, I was going to ask you, why do you think audiences didn't take to it like the X-Files? Because if it was around for 3 seasons, it did reasonably well, right?
I guess my answer, to be careful, the X-Files is David and Jillian.
Mm-hmm.
You watch for Mulder and Scully. And so Millennium had a different thing going on. You know, I think that Terry O'Quinn is like phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And Kristen came in the second year, and Jim and I were brought in, and we brought in Darren to a little more humor to make it less serial killer of the week. And we're approaching the Millennium, and there's just like so much literature on religious, doomsday, apocrypha type stuff. And so that's what we did.
Well, I think of Millennium as like a kind of a precursor to True Detective. I wouldn't be surprised if what's the guy's name? Fukunaga.
Yeah, right.
Was it influenced by Millennium in some
Well, that
way?
would be an honor, because he's pretty great. But yeah, I mean, it was like really ahead of its time. I mean, that show would be tough on streaming right now,
Mm-hmm.
let alone network television back then. And there's again, Tom Wright directed a lot of those episodes, and we had a lot of really great writers. Chip Johannesson was on that, and he went on to Homeland, and
Well, you said people tune in for Mulder and Scully. I tuned in to Millennium for Lance Henriksen, and
okay.
Well,
you like 3 was your favorite X-Files, so I took note on them, writing that down.
I mean, I've always loved Lance Henriksen and Terry O'Quinn, the stepfather. I mean, come on. So I was.
Just think the world of him. You know, he was like, you could always go to him, and we had great casting, and we had a lot of good people. There's an episode of Millennium, and then there's these pack of wild dogs, and the guy that moves to town is played by this guy Randy Stone, who he cast Mulder and Scully. Randy was like instrumental in so much stuff, and he won Academy Award for he was had made this film Trevor, which went on to help found the Trevor Project for gay teens and stuff. And it's just he's not with us anymore, but he was great in that episode, and just he was really he read the X-Files pilot, and he closed it, and he says, David Duchovny is playing Fox Mulder. And Duchovny was a movie star at the time, and Randy talked him into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
I'm sorry, I can't. I have the mute things are in between the comment there about.
Oh,
there you go. Millennium had a brilliant.
Just people showing love for Millennium.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, JG.
Yes, Lance Henriksen is definitely incredible. There's no doubt about that.
Lance, the thing about Lance, like, let me leave it at this. Lance and I, it was like a little bit of a chore at times for Jim.
Really?
Let's leave it.
Really?
And he would go, well, I was in Close Encounters. I'm like, you're not in Close Encounters. He's like, yeah, I'm in Close Encounters. I'm like, I've seen that movie 50 times. You're not in that. And he goes, yeah, I'm Truffaut's handler. The next time I watched Close Encounters, like, Lance seems to be in every scene. I'm like, you're kidding. And then he's in Dog Day Afternoon. He has a big moment at the end. And then he's in Network. He's in Terminator. He's he's like in every, but I never realized it.
Just a great character actor. So
yeah,
I think that was something else that excited me about Millennium, was like he was the star.
Yeah.
So that was kind
of, well, it's great too, is like he didn't really want a lot of lines. He's a very visual actor, and so that dictates the style of the show. It was very quiet and cinematic.
Yeah. So when you're starting out a show like Millennium, you're starting from scratch. Do you know how it's going to end? I know I've heard a lot of writers say when they start a script, they know how it's going to start and they know how it's going to end, and they just fill in the rest. Did you kind of have an idea of like an outline of, I want to do 5 seasons, or I want to do whatever, and here's how it will end, and here's how the characters will go, and so on and so forth?
Well, that was all Chris. I wasn't around for that. Chris wrote that, and then Dave Nutter directed the pilot, and Chris always had Lance in mind. So I don't believe he had that. It was like shows back in those days when the show got picked up, they made you give a piece of paper with 6 possible story ideas, and none of those story ideas are ever made, and you moved on. With shows like, I think, Lost and the X-Files, that went a little off the rail at the end and caused the audience to go, nothing's going to be answered. Now they're more like, what's the end?
Right.
What happens in the next 3 years? So in the last, I guess, 10 or 15 years, 10 years or so, they're more like, what happens
So
in
that
year
they
4? So
they
they
don't
don't,
go
and
off. Yeah.
right, and they don't hold you to it, but they just want to make sure you're not going to jump the
I mean,
shark.
that's smart. I think that's really smart.
I agree.
'Cause
Yeah.
there's so many great shows that I think just stick around too long. And
Well, that's why you got to really respect Vince. I mean, they went to Sal, but it was like, go off, get out on top. Now, that being said, I agree with you, but then you're doing a show like the X-Files and you do one episode with these 3 characters that Lone Gunman, I was like not that high on, and then the audience liked them, and then we brought them in again, and then they get their own show, and now all of a sudden you never had any inkling of those characters when you started it, but you have to incorporate them as you go. So, I think you should have a plan, but also have some wiggle room.
Was it Chris's idea to do the Millennium episode of the X-Files?
Yeah, he wanted some closure. And so, yeah.
Okay. That's cool. And honestly, I'm stunned. I thought Millennium only had like 1 or 2 seasons. I didn't realize
No, it's like first year, and then Jim and I did the second year, and then we left, and they did a third year.
Okay, maybe that's why I remember the third one. Let's talk about Final Destination. I understand that you didn't want you wanted nothing to do with Final Destination initially. Is that right?
Well,
it was a different story than what we saw in the film, right? It was a little different.
Yeah. We got this treatment, I don't recall, 15 pages, 20 pages, I don't know. And I really never made it by, that sounds like, we never made it by page 3, page 5, because the killer, the death, was just like, Ingmar Bergman's death and the Seventh Seal.
With the sickle and the hood. It was a, yes.
And then it was a sheriff, the sheriff with the gut, like looking to, I'm like, this is nuts. And so he's like, no. And then our agent's like, you're going over to New Line and you're going to talk to these guys. No nose. And so Jim and I are like, well, if you're doing that, you can't, first off, you can't kill death. That's ridiculous. That's just like, it's impossible.
Right.
And then you can't see it. What if you can't see it? And then, I think that later I realized how influenced we are by The Omen, especially Omen 2, or when I was a kid in high school, that's what everybody talked about. The Omen was as a David Warner, when he played a glass, cuts his ear off.
Yeah.
That sequence probably had a very big influence on us. So when we went to these guys, executive Brian Witten and Richard Brenner, and we like, you never see it. You can't kill them and you can't see it. And they go, that's great, to our shock. And I'll give those guys credit. And Craig was there too, Craig Perry. And so that's how we proceeded.
So you were off and running, writing all these like ironic, ways for the kids to die. How they should have died in the plane, but
right.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or in the order that they should have.
Right. I don't know. I think that was probably Jim Wong, or I don't know if Bob Shea, the founder and owner of New Line, was insisting on a pattern. And then the rest of it is just like the bus hit was kind of based on, I was I'm pointing because it's over there, the Hollywood Bowl. I went there one summer, in Los Angeles. It's like a big tourist spot. And you're going down Highland, and you're waiting in traffic, and everybody, like, hundreds of people, and blah 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 blah, and you're waiting across the street, and you're talking, you're not really paying attention, and this guy next to me goes to step, and a person behind grabbed him and pulled him back, and a bus went boom, and everybody went, ooh, like you felt the impact almost as if the guy had happened, and it just like just stuck with me. And so I said, hey, what if we do this? Like, so it was all scenes that you had in mind that you kind of threaded together.
Ooh, I've felt that. I feel that right now. As a matter of fact, I almost saw my grandma get hit by a car when I was a kid. So,
well, we've all, I think hopefully, I mean, I know that's why the movie
it resonates.
Yeah, because we've all been there.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. You mentioned Bob Shea, of course, who was the founder of New Line, the house that Freddie built. I've talked to other people about working with
John
Bob Shea.
Waters, Herzog,
and it sounds like, how involved was he in the creative process for Final Destination?
Enough, but Bob's a character, and he can be gruff, and it's a little frightening, but he was always like really great, and he's the boss and all that stuff. But I guess my thing, I'm sorry, I'm looking at, I'm like so long-winded. I don't know if I'm way messing you up here, but Bob,
No,
so we had a preview, and what had happened was, well, you can't beat death. So the type of ending we would have had in the X-Files is like, the only way to beat death is to keep life goes on. So Ali Larter's character had become pregnant, and that's how it was going to go on. And when we had that preview at that point of the thing, it's just like the audience, their souls were sucked out of there, and it was just like, and so Bob Shea came over to Jim and I right when they're passing out cards and stuff for people to respond, and Bob Shea said, I think you got some work to do, but I think you got a hit. And then he left. I'm like, what work? And so, what they do is they give sheets of paper for people. And it's all for marketing people nowadays. It's not for the filmmakers, just a little bit. And they go, and the writing is like done like this. What'd you like about the movie? It was violent, and all this like stuff breaks your heart. Acting was shit. What'd you like? They got hit by a bus. Cool. Like, stuff like that. And like, the acting is bad and blah, 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 blah. So Bob Shea comes back to us the next day and says, I want it to end on another bus hit. I don't care what you do, but I want another bus hit. Like, we whined. And then Jim and I went to this place, the Formosa Cafe, and we had some drinks, and Jim goes, well, they go to Paris, and then the sign falls on them, and then we wrote it, and Bob's like, great. Then we went off and filmed it, and then you had a preview. Didn't change a frame of film prior to that, and all those, the acting was bad and this was bad, all went away. So if Bob Shea had an influence, that was like remarkable to me, that he's like, change the ending. And later I said to him, that was incredible, Bob, that he changed the ending. And he's like, yeah, it doesn't always work.
Well, and James directed Final Destination. Why not? Right. Why not you? Or why not a co-directing thing?
That wasn't done then. Jim had directed, I felt when you do TV, an executive producer goes to direct, they're gone. And a lot of problems just get bigger. So I never did it. And so you're not going to go, hey, let's give this guy that's never done it a feature film. It was always Jim. And I didn't mind, we worked as a team. So I didn't mind it. I did some second unit, and on Final Destination 3, I did a lot of second unit.
Okay. What's your favorite death in the 2 Final Destination films you worked on?
Well, the bus hit from the audience reaction, but then, for me, Kristen's thing, like, I gotta sound like I'm like, I love it when my wife got set on fire, but she's been in so many things that we've done and always gets killed or always goes crazy. That one episode of Millennium, that's a a piece of film that we've done I'm really proud of is just an entire act of her going crazy to Patti Smith, you know, and you just trust her. And so, you know, she really brought it, and it was a kitchen floor, and her body is like, this part of her body is up off the floor, and the rest of it goes under the floor, and then what's on top is a silicone body or whatever. And she just like on the floor for hours without a complaint, and then does a great performance. So I enjoyed that one. You know? And then the one that I hate, everybody, is the tanning bed. I did a lot of that. It was the worst because I just like didn't, you know, like the thought of setting people on fire, it was just horrible. It was really stressful. And that was Kristen's idea too. She's like, I got to do a tanning bed. I'm like, nah. She goes, no, you got to do a tanning bed. I'm like, yeah, no. So she sent me down to Beverly and Fairfax, and I went to this tanning bed place. And I was like, oh yeah, this is horrifying. And I think I wrote that in 20 minutes.
You know? That was a memorable one for me. I used to work in a convenience store that had tanning beds, and
a convenience store. It says, is this in Kentucky?
Literally, it was like a convenience store. They also had tanning beds, and
Wow.
so in between stocking the cooler, I would have to go in and clean the tanning beds after people. And let me tell you, people are freaking disgusting. They never clean those things.
Who knew? Oh wow.
They would pee in the garbage can. I mean, it was nasty. So I'm already turned off to tanning beds. So then, like,
yeah, no, she was right. That was people talk about that scene.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, you were there for the first film. You were absent for the second because you and James were doing the one. What made you come? Did Bob Shea talk you into coming back for part 3, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I think my memory is I think David Ellis had something else to do. He had another project, and I think the guys that wrote that were doing the Butterfly Effect, and they came to us and they said the next one is a roller coaster, and we're like, we're in.
Okay,
you know, and which the coincidence, I suppose, maybe jumping ahead for you, is, you know, Willard was just, no one was going to go see Willard. And I was at the premiere of Lord of the Rings 2, and I was at the bar with Bob Shea. And Bob was like a big supporter of Willard. He really was great to us. And Bob's like, my marketing guys, my executives say that Willard, you know, people want a roller coaster. And Willard's not a roller coaster. I'm like, okay, next film we make, we'll do a roller coaster. Like Finalization 3 was nowhere in sight, but then it was.
He held you to that, though. He held you to the roller coaster.
I don't know if he remembered that, but yeah.
Well, would you ever be inclined to come back and work on it? I mean, they're rebooting it. Would you ever?
Yeah, they're shooting right now. You know, I don't know. I mean, I wish them the best. I kind of, you know, a little tough times, but I kind of feel like I'm really done killing teenagers. On to the next.
You got your fill of teenagers.
Pass the baton, yeah. I can never have enough of that, but no, it's for other younger, better people to do it.
You mentioned Willard, and I mentioned earlier in the stream, I love Crispin Glover. I could watch Crispin Glover watch paint dry, and it would be entertaining. He's such a unique artist. That's all I can.
That's right.
An artist, definitely. Yeah, an artist, no doubt about it. And casting him to play Willard is just an inspired choice. But I got very angry at you when I heard this. He was not your he wasn't your first choice, your second choice, your third choice.
No, I don't know about that. You know, Doug, who was, I'm sorry, I didn't let you finish the question.
No, that was it. I was just like, how could he not have been your first choice?
You know, it's like, I wanted Doug. Doug did put the X-Files on the map, and he's a great actor, and he would have been great. And New Line was like, and not sure if he had done the Green Mile yet or not, but they were like, no. They brought me in one night to the New Line offices and poured some tequila and goes, Glenn, Doug Hutchison is not happening. And And they ran some other names that were kind of goofy, and I was like, eh. And then it becomes that. Then you just become like, who's it going to be? I had some, that's a process with every, like, you put it out there and who wants to do this. And I had a really great long conversation with Jason Schwartzman. I thought he was going to be the guy, and then he didn't do it, and a couple other guys, and then I don't know who. I don't know where it came up. The Crispins. It wasn't me, but somebody said Crispin. I'm like, oh, I like that. And then what happened was a New Line executive was talking to another actor's agent about playing the part. And the executive told the agent, well, these guys now are thinking they like Crispin Glover. And that agent of the other actor said, oh my God, if Crispin Glover was in that, I would watch that movie every day. And that was it. And then he came in and met Jim and I, and I just love him.
Yeah. Oh God. Yes. And what I discovered, when I was doing some research about the casting process for Willard, was how every time you made an offer, that was an extra week that was pushed out from starting production. So it was like everybody you went to, that just made the production go back further and further. The start date go back further and
I
further.
think 9/11 might have been around there too, and all that. I think Crispin was doing something, and we're going to go in the fall, and then we moved to February.
Okay.
But that's common.
Okay. Every actor has their own process to get into character. What was Crispin's process like? How would you describe his process? Might be a better question.
I have ideas, and I came to know it, but I'm being cautious just because I'm being respectful of his privacy. And I think that he really has, he's very concerned that people think he's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's not, but that's not fair. He's an artist who, moves to a different drummer. And I really felt like he was a real collaborator with me. Like some actors, like if you're directing whatever, and Duchovny's like, why am I sitting here? I should be over there. You go, just sit there. We're going, blah, 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 blah. The Crispin would be like, and you'd have to go over into the darkness and the shadows offset. And he would lay out his stuff, which was always really smart. And then if I had an issue, I'm like, well, blah, blah, blah. And then we'd get into, we would usually discuss choices by examples from other films. And that guy knows his films. Mm-hmm. So he would bring up Fellini examples, and I'm like, oh, you got me, so. Yeah. But I just, he was never a diva. He was always very polite, and I loved him.
He seems very, I've seen many interviews with him. He just seems very thoughtful and very, he's extremely articulate. To me, he's just I would never say he's crazy. He's unique. And that's why I like him. And he could have very easily just been gone for those leading man romantic comedy roles. But he wanted something more interesting, something more depth that he could really apply himself to. And I've always really respected that about Crispin Glover.
Oh, he's just great. He has his own films. Have you ever, those are extremely memorable. There's a lot of movies I can't remember by the time the end credits and I'm in the lobby. I don't know what they are, but I remember his movies.
What? And he's a musician.
He's everything. That's right. I know. Yeah. Well, he sang Ben.
I was going to say, whose idea was it for him to cover Michael Jackson's Ben over the closing credits?
That was mine, and it was also my idea to let him direct the music video. And then he got Lee Ermey, and then I'm like, well, I'll go down there. And he's like, oh, you have to come down. We're filming in the original soundstage in Los Angeles. I'm like, okay, well, it was Silver Lake. I go down there, I walk in there. There's Lee with a big German mustache, and there's I don't know, a dozen penthouse pets and lingerie with rats, cotton ball rats, and I'm like, oh, I'm staying here all day. It was it was interesting.
I've seen that video. It's very expressionistic. It's very performance art.
Yeah, he
It's
got really behind, and at the end of the day, Lee Ermey just comes in. He goes, "Okay, then you're going to do this, and you're going to cover this, and you're going to get a single, and you're going to go wide." And then Kristen's like, "Okay,
you do what Lee Ermey tells you, right?
oh yeah,
Well, and speaking of R. Lee Ermey, I mean, he's another force of nature who's just unfortunately no longer with us. I think
yeah."
most people probably know him from, Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, or he got
He was great.
in the
Mississippi Burning.
in
Hmm.
the Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Hmm.
remake and the prequel to
Hmm.
that remake. He had very big roles in that
Hmm.
kind of introduced him to a whole new generation.
Hmm.
What was he like to work with?
He was, I loved him too. You couldn't have two more different people. Lee wanted to get in, get it. He was prepared,
Mhm.
and Lee did 4 tours of Vietnam, I think, and he signed up for them, and he had a different political leaning than most of us in Hollywood, and it never got in the way, and always with respect, and he always made me laugh. The problem is on Willard was filmed to be a hard R, and
Mhm.
then The Ring came out, and that was it. They said, "Oh, there'll never be a hard R horror movie again." And they made me cut out all this stuff. So Lee Ermey, you could say, "Hey, Lee, throw some stuff on the way back to the office, say some stuff." And so you never knew what he was going to say. And he's like, "You're not worth a pimple on your mother's butt," or whatever he'd say, Marine drill instructor stuff. And we're always laughing. And it was really great. And they cut it. And then, we're in post, he kind of came to me and let me have it. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah. I mean, you talked about test screenings earlier, and I know Willard went through some rough test screenings, and you had to do a lot of, and of course, on top of that, they wanted it cut down from a hard R to a PG-13. And are you, yeah, when it comes to test screenings, it's people are, they love them, they hate them, some tolerate them. What are they constructive in it? Because I mean, nobody test screened, you know, The Shining. Nobody test screened Full Metal Jacket. I mean, are they
No,
constructive? Are they what are your thoughts on test screening?
I don't. They're for marketing people.
Right.
In the old days, you read like Billy Wilder, they give you a card. I didn't like that actor. That was it. But if you've been around, you can watch it and know if the audience is liking it, if they're laughing, if they seem scared, if they've left. That helps the filmmaker, I suppose. But all this stuff of it just doesn't. It's like they go to Universal Studios and they recruit people to watch a movie, and they're going to give them
Mhm,
free popcorn and stuff.
mhm.
And now it becomes transactional in a weird way, and it's not middle America, or and so you're just. I think the science is shit. I
And
despise it.
they're pulling people who would probably never go see a movie called Willard about a guy, would never see that movie in the first
Yeah.
place.
I had
So
really good friends go, "Oh, I didn't see it." I'm like, "You didn't see my movie? It's the only movie I ever made." And they go, "I just hate rats."
Mhm.
And I'm like, "Oh, all right."
But didn't they say that, like, oh, we're leaving X million dollars on the table if it goes R?
Which I I felt the exact opposite, but it was at a time. There was, and there was an individual who shall remain nameless who was like, "There'll never be another R-rated horror
Mm,
movie." And then, of course, whether it was 6 months or a year later, they released Texas Chainsaw Massacre
mhm,
remake. And yeah, and then the same individual about 3 weeks before Final Destination 3, he's like, "We're not making this. We're shutting it down because The Mask 2 did not do well."
mm.
And so he goes, "Well, no more sequels. There'll never be sequels in Hollywood." And they go, "Yeah, if you do them right." And then Bob Shea and his partner came, saved the day, said, "No, we're making this." So there's always somebody. No, sorry,
For
but I
most
want to say Willard and New Line were much better than Miramax and Bob Weinstein. But Bob was always supportive of Jim and I.
that, yeah, 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 yeah. I heard he was an advocate for
Yeah,
for that film and for you. So
He was like, one time he's like, Bob's come in the editing room. We go, oh, here we go. And we went out, ran out and bought shot glasses and a bottle of tequila. Like, hey, cheers. And like, okay, let's watch the film. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. And he was asleep in 10 minutes. And we're just looking at each other going, what is this? And then it was over. He's like, you know what? Well acted, well written, well shot. Sometimes they just don't want to see him. And then he left, and that was that.
Mm. Well, and you had another. I mean, this was your directorial debut feature film,
Mm-hmm.
and they always say never work with kids or animals. You worked with a lot of animals on this one, but from my understanding, these rats were easier to work with than some of the actors.
They were, this guy Boone Noir, who was a legend. When you went to his farm, you go, oh, there's the dog from the Pepsi commercial. Oh, there's the cat from the. It was like there were a lot of celebrities there, and he just would go, well, here's what we're gonna do is like some of these rats will be born to do this, to run across the living room, and you get a couple warm-ups, you get 4 or 5 takes, and then they're fed and bored, and that was exactly right. And so you could count your day. They did exactly what they were asked to do, and they were kept in 72-degree trailer, and comfortable and all that stuff. And nobody, one AD got bit, and because he had stepped on a rat accidentally, and
Ooh.
it was great.
So what did the cast think of the rats? Were they cool with the rats, or were they kind of, like,
their rats are. Go ahead.
I was going to say, don't tell me Arlie Ermey was like afraid of rats.
Lee Ermey not afraid of anything.
Like he screamed and jumped up on the desk when No.
James Morrison, a really great actor, friend of ours, was playing golf with Lee Ermey in Australia. We were doing this Space Above and Beyond, and it was like thunder and lightning, like Caddyshack. And Morrison was like, Lee, we got to get out of here. We're going to get electrocuted. And Lee's like, I didn't do 4 tours of Vietnam to die on an Australian golf course. And no, everybody, the rats, they're very smart. They know their names. They're not, there's like if you have hay fever, it's like collectively there can become a hay fever thing that can get up in your nose. But otherwise, they're kind of nice animals that, right? The plague is not a rat. It was the mosquito or whatever on the flea on the rat.
And what was funny in like the bin rat, like the bin rat gives a performance in that movie.
He's not a rat.
No, he's what was he? He was
a Gambian pouch rat, they're called. So he's a marsupial.
There you go.
Because the trainers, I'm like, well, I want Ben's got to be like that rat you all hear in New York City, and they're like, a rat. The biggest I get is this. Like, no. People go, there's a rat. It was as big as a dog. He's like, yeah. No rat gets bigger than whatever it is, 3 or 4 pounds or whatever it was. And I'm like, I don't believe that. And it's true. So in order to get a bigger size rat, you had to go beyond a rat.
That was a good performance from Ben. So
yeah. Well, you had to keep him away from the other rats because he would attack the rats.
Okay. Well, a typical actor. Prima donna, you know what I mean?
Those marsupials. Yeah.
There you go. You filmed what? There were at least 3 different endings. You tested 3 different endings, right? Or was it 2? There was the ending where Willard died.
Yeah.
There's the ending there's something more poetic about that one, that the rats that he controlled and loved and whatever ate him. I like that ending, but I understand people hated that ending. That one was
but then again, it's not the audience is going to go to that movie.
Exactly.
The audience that would go see Crispin Glover would go, oh yeah, and like it's I from day one, because I love that movie. Later on I got to work with Bruce Davidson on a TV show. He's like a great guy, and like when I was a kid, those were my favorite movies. What I was going to show you, I have it back there. I actually have a rubber rat that was used at the house where they filmed is not far from me. And that I was just like, Pearl Jam's Rats.
Ah.
That's the ending. Like, oh yeah, asked me one thing I knew. It was going to be a move up to the window where Ben was like licking himself after killing Willard, to Pearl Jam's Rats. And we put it together. It was shit. I'm like, what? And so then they just wanted him to live, and Crispin wanted him to live so there could be a sequel.
He's planning ahead.
Yeah.
But I do, that ending where, is that rat real, or is that rat in his mind?
I would say the rat is real. Again, for me, I regret. I think it's just too psycho. It's a little too heavy on my love of Psycho. That ending comes from Psycho. So, one of my favorite things to write about, and what that was about, is don't become what you hate. And so that he dies, he's punished for becoming what he hates. He became the boss. He became this bully, and he used the rats for his own benefit. And that's what people were doing about him. And that's the proper ending. And so once you go, he's got to live. Now you don't, that all the lessons that you wrote, you constructed all this stuff to say he should be punished. It doesn't make sense anymore. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What do you know? You like 3.
Exactly. I've got bad taste.
Yeah.
I like both endings. The death is poetic, but I do kind of like the fact that, maybe he's planning his next revenge.
I would have been happy to do it with him.
But. So yeah.
Am I breaking the record for your longest guest? I'm the most long-winded person.
No, God, no. Okay. Please.
My son in Penn State's gone to bed. I know that.
He's got class tomorrow early.
He's heard it all.
So this was your feature film directorial debut. What did you take away from this experience?
Well, I learned a lot. I was bummed out to not, get Bob his money back. He did a lot for Jim and I really liked him. And, it's going to be, I'll go, hey, don't, stick to your guns. It should have been a hard R. I should have fought it. And if we ever have time to talk about Black Christmas, I betrayed what I learned on that experience, but that's what I got from it, and just, a lot of, you can go to film school and read a lot about directing, but until you're in there and your friends look at you like, are you an idiot? Mm-hmm. You can't really know what it's like to direct until you've been in that spot.
Well, before we, by the way, if anybody out there wants to jump on and ask,
no one's left. No, everyone left.
If anybody does want to jump on who's still here,
okay.
that link is available to my patrons and my channel members right now. So if you want to jump on, go ahead and jump on. I'll make the link available to everybody else here shortly. But before we talk about Black Christmas, I want to talk about Bob Clark.
All right.
Every holiday season, I make a post on social media, just a reminder of how much of an underrated and versatile filmmaker he was, to have directed 2 holiday classics
completely different,
the completely opposite ends of the genre spectrum. And on top of that, he created the teen sex comedy.
Yep.
Yet you very seldom hear anybody talk about Bob Clark, even around Christmas time when the Christmas Story is playing 24/7. You don't really hear people. It's.
Well, he was a very modest man. I think that's one thing you've come across in Hollywood is like, big mouths win the day, and Bob just wanted to make movies. Bob was a very, he reminded me somewhat of Thomas Mitchell and It's a Wonderful Life. Is it Uncle Harry? The kind of absent-minded professor. That's, he was just the nicest guy, and knew his stuff. He at the time he told me that Christmas Story was made for $4 million, 400,000 of which was his own money, so he could film in Cleveland when it snowed. When I met him, whatever that was, 25 years later, Warner Brothers is claiming that they hadn't made any money. So Bob was suing, accounting them, and he felt horrible about it. And then one of the producers like, they don't respect you unless you do that. And Bob was just like, it tortured him that he had to take legal action to try to get his money. I'm like, Bob, I own 2 versions on DVD of Christmas Story. Gone with the Wind's ratings had gone down. It was like nonsense. And he just felt bad for trying to get after something that was legally, morally his.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, how did you two? I know you two became friends prior to his untimely passing. How did you guys become friends?
Well, they, this Marty Adelstein, who had been our agent, who had left, and he called me up again at Willard. I was like, I'll never do a remake. And if you're trying to break into the business and stuff, they do remakes because it's a marketing thing. It goes beyond the noise, and we can all blame Hollywood and stuff, but it's the marketing guys. Mm-hmm. A little bit of the audience's fault to not try out new movies. And so Marty's like, do you want to do a remake of this? I paused because it was so. When I moved from Syracuse and San Diego, high school, I didn't have a lot of friends, and there was a precursor down there to HBO, and they showed Black Christmas all the time, and I watched it all the time. It's a brilliant movie that I think Carpenter's extremely influenced by to make Halloween. Mm-hmm. And so then I met Bob and we hit it off, and it was just always had his blessing. He always like, whatever you want to do. And I'm like, well, why'd you do this? He's like, well, what do you want to do? And like, we just had that kind of dialogue, and he was just great. You're absolutely right. That was, he also did Murder by Decree. It was like a really great Sherlock Holmes mystery,
Yeah, people overlook Murder by Decree is great. Death Dream is phenomenal. Even, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. That was the first movie he claimed. It wasn't technically his first movie, but that one's a little rough around the edges, but it's still pretty good. So he
did From the Hip. That's David Kelly's first Hollywood thing. So he went on to Ally McBeal and Picket Fences, and so he had played a part in that.
And people forget, like, I know, Baby Geniuses isn't, in my demographic, but that was a huge success too. So it's just he dabbled in every genre. He had success in every genre, and like, it's just, I don't know, it's just too bad that he doesn't get the recognition he deserves. And
yeah, I agree. He's not here. And even if he was here, he'd be like, oh, what's my next movie? That was all that he mattered to him.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me the story of you wanted a Black Christmas script, and he brought you not just a script for Black Christmas, his shooting script with his notes in the margins from 70.
It belonged in a film museum. I was like, I pulled it out of the package. I'm like, no, I can't be responsible for this. And I just I think I copied it and put it back. And I'm like, Bob, where are you? I need to return this immediately.
Yeah, it needs to be in the freaking Smithsonian.
Yeah.
That's right. Deranged is good. Yes, Deranged.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's nothing. He really, it's like different degrees, like anybody, but he was so varied. Like Ang Lee level and variations of the films he made.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, such a great film. Such a tragic loss. Such a tragic loss. So I know Black Christmas, or let's call it Black Xmas. Was your idea, was it Black Christmas or Black Xmas, or is that a marketing thing? Black Xmas.
That was a marketing thing.
Okay. So I know your Black Christmas didn't turn out the way that you had intended, and you've not talked about it very much. So I appreciate you being open to talk about it. here. And how did it? I mean, well, you kind of mentioned how you got involved with, you being clearly a fan of the original Black Christmas, and that's, you touched on something too, where horror fans, we have just when we hear there's another remake coming or another reboot or another reimagining, we just kind of go, God, oh shit, can't they come up with anything new? But if that's the work that's being offered you, if that's the only work that's being offered you, you got to work. And so it probably, I mean, you love Black Christmas. You certainly don't want to step on anybody's toes. You revere
I asked Bob all along the way.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it was actually somebody at 29, and executives like, I want 2 serial killers. I was like, oh God. And I went to Bob and like, he never pushed anything on me. I'm like, well, you could do this. And he's like, well, okay. And then he gave some ideas and stuff. So sorry. But I mean, yeah, if in history, like Wizard of Oz is a remake. I believe Maltese Falcon is a remake, and well, so
John Carpenter's The Thing is a remake.
That's right. They're both great.
Yeah.
They're both great. And so, just, I was like in film jail and there was this thing and the chance to do it, a chance to direct. And it was, a hero of mine. And like, here we go.
Yeah. So you mentioned 2929. This was in the early stages. Miramax or the Weinsteins weren't involved. When they became involved, I'm sure everybody knew of their reputation. Were you like, okay, I'm out? I just
that went through my head. I mean, I have a really good friend who through sort of marriage in a way or whatever was social with Bob. And so I had met Bob. I knew him, nothing where I would go to jail, I should be in jail for, but and so we just kind of knew of each other. And there was no real kind of animosity. But when he signed, when I think we're in pre-production and I'm like, oh, I should go. I know what lies ahead. And I'm like, well, I'm not banging down my door to direct. So let's try it. And filming it, he was no problem. Shooting it was a dream. And then again, that was around the time. I'm sorry if I think I'm anticipating some
no,
here,
you definitely anticipated that, because I was going to ask, like, how was the relationship in the beginning? So
he wasn't around. They weren't around, and actually the movie had been offered to Miramax and they passed, and I was like, woo! And then they bought in like 11% or something of 2929. I'm like, and then, they weren't. And then, I don't, whether we're making it or whatever, was the rise in that era of torture porn. And I work for guys like I mentioned. I worked for Sandy Howard, and his big hit was this movie, A Man Called Horse. And every movie he made, he tried to do some version of Boys Next Door. He was going, let's put on the beginning, oh, there's so many murders in America, because I put that on the beginning of A Man Called Horse. I'm like, what the hell? So Bob was always trying to remake Scream. And so like, well, this isn't Scream. I don't want to do Scream. And Hostel and Saw were coming out and doing well, and he wanted that. And like, while I respect Saw a great deal, the torture porn, I don't.
Same.
It's not my thing.
Same.
And I'm like, I fought him tooth and nail and lost.
So your vision wasn't quite as
Bob's
violent or graphic as Bob's.
The original Black Christmas. There's
yeah.
Not that she comes on the rocking chair is like, to my memory, the most jump scare violent thing in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's hardly any blood in it. I mean, the scene where Margot Kidder's killed with the unicorn thing, that's that's the only time you see blood in the movie.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until post-production that things kind of you started to sense there were some.
Well, and then 2929 had a guy he was in charge. He was more of a production guy. He wasn't a creative guy. The creative guy had left. And so, you know, I remember one day he came in like we were just yelling, and I was like cutting stuff down and just take that out, take that out. And the editors and everybody go, oh no, I'm just, they take it out, they're going to fire me and they're going to take it out. And I'd rather do it this way. And then one day the guy comes in and he says, you know, Glenn, I watched the movie again. And in my head, I'm like, oh man, stop watching the movie. Every time you watch the movie, you make it worse. And he's like, everything that you say is in the movie. You're right. I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to get my way. And then he says, but you have to think about it. And horror fans, you don't want them thinking about it. They don't want to think about a movie. And I feel the exact opposite. I feel that horror and sci-fi fans are about the most intelligent out there. And I knew I was dead at that point. And then we had the screening, this place in Manhattan, and Bob's like, I have 15 producers. Nobody helped me out with Bob Weinstein. They were the most powerful thing going then.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I mean, people kind of, I mean, they know of the Weinsteins from everything that happened with Harvey and whatnot, but
yeah,
they for many, many years, they were the most powerful thing in Hollywood. They could make you or break you. And like, I mean, like all of this knowledge that we learned, like, was common knowledge to a lot of people. They just didn't want to say anything because they knew their career would be gone, or, you know, they'd end up in a dumpster somewhere. So,
well, and Bob, from what I understand, Bob made the money. Scream and the Miramax, the horror movies and stuff, they made the money. Harvey won the Oscars.
Right.
You know,
right.
we have a Pulp Fiction level hit, but Bob was the one that made the money. And
Bob was the Dimension guy and Harvey was the Miramax guy.
Right. And so at that screening, Bob was like, what'd you think? I'm like, oh, yeah, didn't do, yeah. He's like, I'm like, look, Bob, here's the deal. I know that you didn't want to make this movie. You were offered it and passed. And now you're here. So you're investing. I want you to be happy. I respect that you gave money. However, I came into this to rectify some things in the past that had been pushed on me. And so I want my movie that I'm going to be happy with. So let's work to both be happy. He's like, yeah, okay, buddy. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Then he goes, and I'm like, whoo, I pulled that off. I mean, I pull it off. I was honest with him. And then he's like, come here. It's like, we're outside the bathroom. There's like kids coming off the arcade, like moving by me and Bob Weinstein. He's like, are we okay? I'm like, what do you mean? I just told you I want you to be happy. He's like, okay, but you mean that? I'm like, yeah, but I want to make my movie.
Right.
He's like, okay, I get that, blah, blah, blah. And then when I got back to LA, I got called into 2929 and they're like, what the hell did you say to Bob Weinstein? He's furious. I'm like, and I told him what I said and they believed me. And it was just like that over and over. And it's just, the point now, as we talked about, has a nice following. It's like kind of gathering some momentum,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've had a number of people who've worked with the Weinsteins, mostly Bob, because it's horror, so it's the Dimension part of wing, if you will.
Yeah.
And they've all
Harvey.
yeah. Harvey was up in the hotel room with that robe on.
Now that's horror.
That is true horror.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
that is true horror.
Yeah.
And of course they've all shared similar stories of Bob being difficult and their time there not being
forthright.
Yeah. And I've just kind of wondered, like, what was up with that dude? Like, why couldn't he just leave things be? Like why be so difficult? It's like, you're a powerful guy, you're a millionaire, I'm sure you're living out your dream. Like, what's the deal?
Power's a thing, man. I think we're all, let's not get into it, but we're seeing that. And it's like people like power. And if you're like a couple of dorks from Buffalo and now you're out there and everybody wants to be your friend and beautiful men and women are like your friend, and why wouldn't you want to keep that? And then you just like start to believe that you're the only one that knows what's going on.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right?
That's right. Yep. Yep.
Was there a point where you realized like, yeah, I'm just not going to win this fight? And did you ever think like, I'm just done. Let me Alan Smithy this thing.
I talked to my lawyer about I should leave, and then he's like, well, you don't want that reputation and all that stuff. And I thought, well, I'll do my best. And then at a certain point, they seemed to give up. And then they said, oh, we're going to film some stuff for the trailer. And you don't need to go there. It's going to be, Christmas bulbs and candles and whatever. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, and trying to be a good sport. I'm like, yeah, well, okay, all right. And so going to do it over a weekend. And I didn't go down there. And then I get a call from Michelle Trachtenberg. She's like, I've got a rifle. What am I doing with a rifle? I'm like, what are you doing with a rifle? What? And then Dean Friss, who played Agnes the killer, he's like, Glenn, they've got me on the roof of the thing. I'm like, what? And so it's the weekend. I can't get a hold of anybody to go, what are you doing? And then they were using that for the trailer, but I think they were trying to sneak it in. And I'm like, what's the brains behind showing these scenes in the trailer that are not in the movie? So you're going to anger people who you're going to rip them off. And so why not just try to make a trailer that depicts what the movie is? And everyone ignored me. And then I got my director's DVD, showed up at my door in an envelope. Here's your director's cut, which I should have gone to the DGA, but I'm like, let's get this over with.
Now, was that truly your director's cut of the film?
No.
Okay. I remember that trailer vividly, and I remember several of those scenes in the trailer that's not in the movie, because there's
That's
like
right.
a scene where like Billy it's like on the wall Spider-Man style on the ceiling.
There's like a lawnmower thing with Christmas lights in it or something.
And like I don't remember if I think it might have been Michelle Trachtenberg. It's like being pulled into it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, it was Lacey Chabert was being pulled into it, like the spinning.
Oh, I
thing.
don't remember that. Oh, I got a call from Michelle who was like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, I was embarrassed because they obviously were going behind my back.
Yeah. So, yeah, I remember that pretty vividly. I also remember seeing the film opening weekend the day after Christmas.
We've talked about that because I'm like, this is gotta be. Bob's like, we're releasing on Christmas Day. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I did a lot of business with this movie Wolf Creek on Christmas Day. I'm like, that's because it's counter to Christmas. A Christmas Day at 11 o'clock, I am done with Christmas. Let's get to New Year's. And you need to have this like at least a week ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
2
yes.
weeks. So people come home from college and they get away from their family and they go have a laugh at this punk rock Christmas movie. And 2929 says we think we're leaving a significant amount of money on the table by not releasing when you said. And I'm like, well, then why don't you fight them? And then no one would fight because of everything we talked about. And recently, the last few years ago, when Blumhouse released their Black Christmas, I was like so jealous. They came out like December 12th or something, like the perfect day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. But the movie, and we talked about this on our pre-interview, and I don't know if you were really even aware of this, but time has been really good to that movie. And truth be told, when I first saw it, I wasn't a fan. Put it that way. I wasn't a fan. But it's a movie
Neither
that
was I.
So we had that in common.
Yeah.
But it was a movie that I would go back to, like just about every holiday season. And the more I watched it, the more I mentioned like the punk rock aspect of it, but I love the energy in the film. I love the colors. I love the style. I love all those awesome angles. I like the characters. I like those girls.
Mm-hmm.
I like Andrea Martin.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's become one of those things. I watch it every single holiday season, and I've kind of noticed this turn where like there for a while you couldn't find somebody who had anything nice to say about the movie. Now
Mhm.
it's difficult, at least in my opinion, to find anybody who says anything negative about it, and especially since we've learned all of the issues that you had with it. There's a lot of people out there who s- significant or who legitimately love this movie, and I'm one of them.
Well, thanks. I think I don't know what that is. You mentioned Rob McLaughlin. He was a director of photography, and he went on to do Game of Thrones. He was one of the DPs on that, and Ray Donovan, and he's just like he did the Final Destination movies with us and stuff, and he's just like great. And Mark Freeborn was a production designer, and he built the Super Lab of Breaking Bad, and just a lot of great artists. And he had Mary Winstead and Kristen, and Crystal Lowe is now directing on her own, and Lacey Chabert like owns the Hallmark Channel, and everybody went on to do well. And yeah, Andrea Martin is a god in my eyes, and she was in the original
Mhm.
that she told me she didn't remember making. And so I don't know. I think there's a kind of it's a little older school.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe at the time with torture porn, that was the hip thing in a way, and so it looked a little older. And now when you look at it, it's like you've got a bunch of people that care for each other, and even the villains sort of care for each other.
Right, yeah, I mean, they're
And
brother and sister, or
that's
well,
right.
they're
The brother
father
and
and daughter.
fathers, yeah, all
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I don't know, maybe it's something about that. The one thing I really get a kick out of is I'm told through most of the cast that it's popular in the LGBTQ community,
Mm.
which I've asked why, and then I get told, well, it's like sorority bitch fight.
Right.
But that means a lot to me.
Yeah. And, and I'm not trying to, like, kiss your ass or anything, but I think even though, I mean, you've only directed the 2 films, you have a certain style and a certain tone to your work that's very much like, I could watch Willard and watch Black Christmas back to back and go, "I did the same guy do both those?" So, I think that's
Any
cool.
chance you're going to run a studio anytime soon? I need you out there. Thank you very much. That means a lot to me. I've been, I when I do these things and I'm trying to be honest so that filmmakers go, hey man, it's a gauntlet out there, and here's the things that
Mhm.
can happen to you. And I really respect the guys that go, no, I won't let you do that and get away with it and keep their vision. I think those are mistakes, but um, it does mean a lot to
Right.
have anyone say such a thing. So
Well,
thanks.
and look, I mean, I'm sure for many, many years you lived under the impression that everybody hated this movie. You did a horrible job, and it's not the movie that you wanted it to be. I can't imagine the heartache and the frustration of, like, you're remaking this movie that you love, directed by this filmmaker who you revere, and you just had all of these issues and your vision's completely compromised. But at the end of the day, it's your name on the thing. You're the
I,
author of
I
the
I
thing.
go to film jail. Everybody else went on to do something, and I'm like that. That might be the last thing I ever get to direct, and that's the hard part. But um, and we made a little money. If it had come out a week ahead, we would have done a bigger profit. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned this term film jail, and I've spoken to other directors who've done stints in film jail.
Hmm.
And I don't, I mean, I get that, like, the director is everything. Like, if a movie is a success, it's a collaborative process. If the movie tanks, the director, so
Well, I was at the Directors Guild Awards, and Christopher Nolan gave a speech, and he was like really great. He's like, the papers and the critics will say Christopher Nolan sets off a nuclear bomb in the desert, but it's like my ADs. It's the production design. It's all these hundreds of people that do it, and I get the credit. But it was just I go, this is what I want to do, and they do it. So I respect that outlook.
yeah, yeah. But I think it's a little poetic thing. It's poetic. Look where the Weinsteins are now. And look, and Black Christmas has like been, I don't want to say resurrected, but it's been reevaluated and people love it. And I was telling you about there's that German release that's got 3 different cuts of the movie on it. That's pretty highly sought after now by fans. So I
Yeah, I've
would love
heard
to get.
about that. Well, the only thing that needed the only thank you. I hope it continues to have that, but fortunately for the world, Harvey Weinstein was reevaluated and things are
So
right.
how long, what could get, what's your get out of jail free card for director's jail? How do you get out of there?
I don't know. I'm clearly it's been a while. Kristen has a really great horror movie script, and we're shopping that around. And I think that people by now might go, yeah, okay. I think we'd like to do that together. I keep doing that. I did get to direct a bunch of the new X-Files.
Mhm.
Pardon me, when we went back, and I don't know. You know,
Mm.
Thanks, Swaggy. I'm a fan of your profile picture. My brother would like that.
And what's it like working with your lovely wife, Kristen? Do you guys ever get into it on set? Is there any creative differences? Or you guys just
No, those
completely
are home
simpatico?
like when we did Black Christmas, it was like, this is a dream come true. Oh, we're gonna work together. Oh, this is gonna be so great. And then like she comes in and she got the coat and the thing, and like, okay, we're gonna be here and you're gonna do this. And then she's, I don't know, she took issue. And I think like from the first direction I gave her, we were off to the races, and I was like, oh, this is a mistake. And then I don't know what it was, just an anomaly or whatever. And then it's always been great. She knows. She trusts me. I trust her. She is an outstanding writer. Um,
Hmm.
she's she's much better than I am. She wrote X-Files that had no dialogue. All these drones and computers were after Mulder and Scully and stuff. And we just, it's been a long time. We get each other.
I love her in Black Christmas. I love that performance. She's just like, you know,
She
I
still
like
has a coat.
oh, cool. Nice. Um, good question here from Dave about how your version of Black Christmas. I understand you did an ending similar to Bob Clark's ending with the phone ringing, only a little bit of an update with a cell phone. And of course, Kristen doesn't die in your
Kristen
version.
doesn't die. She was very happy.
So tell us how did your Black Christmas end?
Well, that was, to me, somehow, when a stranger calls, gets credit for having the calls coming from the house.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, the end of Black Christmas is the original. The call is coming from
Mm-hmm.
the house. So you probably didn't get a phone call. I don't remember if John Saxon calls up and goes, "Is coming from whatever."
I do. There is a scene where the
Okay.
guy from the phone company when he
Yeah.
tracks down the
Right.
call.
That
Or
right.
no, wait a minute. No, it was that bumbling deputy who's like, the calls are coming from
Yeah. Right. Right.
inside.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know how that happened. And so I'm like, you got to honor that. And we were, it was pre-smartphone, 2 years
Mhm.
before the Apple came out, and let's have all this stuff. There seems to be a resolution. Uh, um, they had the personal effects with the envelope and all her stuff, and then the phone rings from the envelope to indicate that Billy or Agnes, whoever was still alive. That the calls that they just left the phone ringing, and it was like, okay, now we're off our landlines, but we're still not away from danger. Right? And then we had this great tracking shot. It took us all day to set it up where you left the window and they stayed at the window and the snow fell with the Christmas lights. I thought that Bob just did that. Bob tapped into how scary Christmas is, the color, the bright against black, red against black, and all that stuff. And we just did that, and that's gone.
Would you, if the possibility arose where you could do your director's cut and put that cut of the film together, would you do that? Would you go back
Yeah, of course. But I think all that material's gone or something. Dean Friss, who played Agnes, he's like, he's great. He's a great camera operator.
Mm.
He'd be a great director. He did a version of Black Christmas, kind of a Schindler's Listy, where it was just the color red. It was black and white, except for everything when the color red was. And I think he tried to use as much of the original intent as possible.
Mm. The link to join the stream, if anybody wants to jump on and ask Glenn a question, is out there. So jump on. If you've got any questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat. If you're shy, I understand.
I know I'm going to go in, and Kristen's going to go, "What the hell were you talking about for 2 hours? You're not that." I'm done.
You've worked on a number of projects since Black Christmas, of course. Most recently, the Jordan Peele Twilight Zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're definitely open to returning to the director's chair at some point in the future. So that's definitely something I think we can all look forward to.
I hope. Thank you. I hope so. It was a really, I'm not saying it to be an ass kiss, as you said. My time in the writer's room with Jordan Peele was like, I really have, anybody wondering, he's the real deal. He really, I really liked how he'd come in and go, this is this. It was like 9:30. You started working. Writers come in and they talk about the Lakers and Trump, and then you have lunch, and then you really start working around 2. He was like 9:30, picked up where we left off, and then we'd be done by 2, which is how he was proficient. And he would say, well, how about this, blah, blah, blah. I go, that's a great idea. And then he'd come back the next day and goes, thinking about it, and wouldn't this be better? And it always was. And, and then on top of that, you're in a room with 3 other people and talking about ideas, and you get to hear Jordan Peele express an idea as Obama, and you go, I'm so glad I came to work.
Yeah, he's definitely come out as not a new voice, but I mean a newer voice, I guess. He's been since Get Out, which was several years ago.
He knows his horror. I was on set, and he and Seth Rogen were behind me. They were talking about the most obscure horror movies. I had no idea what they were talking about, and they were like into it. Those guys are versed in horror.
That's great.
Yeah.
The Shape, he's definitely down to watch whatever you direct next.
Thank you, Shape. Where's Michael Myers. Okay.
Michael Myers.
Very good.
And Alex Movie Collector, you had a question about some projects that Glenn was maybe supposed to direct. Go ahead and post those again. I can't find those.
I don't know, because they don't exist. The one thing I did like, we did this show, it might be on Hulu, called Intruders, that Kristen did a lot of writing. It was Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things, was 10 years old, and she's fantastic. And again, we're sort of beholden to BBC England, which I don't understand, but it kind of went under the radar. But I think it's like there's some horror in it, but kind of a supernatural thing. And John Sim, who is most known to us as the Master on Doctor Who, and James Frain, who is on Gotham, and he did a Twilight Zone. It's a lot of Karen Conoval, who played the mother under the bed and the mother in Black Christmas, and Alex Dakin, who is in a lot of my brother's X-Files. He's just a great actor. So if you're on Hulu and with nothing to watch, check that out. I think that's another one that slipped under the radar.
Okay. We've got somebody in the green room, but I want to ask you this question because it has to do with the one, and we kind of glossed over the one. Eerie Spirit says, Glenn, thank you for helping in the creation of the Jet Li film, The One. My dad took me to see the film, and we had a blast. The film made me a Jet Li fan. Also, random note, the James Bond film Die Another Day stole your film's idea of the MRI machine pulling a gun out of the villain's hand.
How can you not do that? It's obvious.
I actually heard Jet Li wasn't the first choice to play that lead, right?
That's right. It was the Dwayne Johnson,
The Rock. That would have been a totally different movie, I think.
Totally different, a lot funnier. I had there's a page of dialogue for The Rock, and then when Jet came in, that dialogue, they're just different.
Was
performers.
was Rock busy doing something else? Was he not? How did
He
Rock not?
he was still managed by Vince McMahon, who at the last minute pulled him into the Scorpion King. And but it was also one of Jason Statham's first American films.
Okay.
And you know, Jet is phenomenal. And you know, I've been fortunate in my life. I've seen Gretzky, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Barry Sanders, and we were working with him on a scene in a smaller old hotel in Switzerland on Lake Montreux, and he was going, I want the bad guy to do this form of martial arts called wushu that was developed by prisoners who were shackled and so could only move in a one line. And so Jet, you know, I think he's shorter than I am, you know, and the speed and the way the entire hotel suite shook. It was he's only like 10 feet from me.
Yeah.
And I was like, my eyes playing tricks? What? Like, it was phenomenal. And then all his fight team, same way. And I'm blanking on his Asian name, but Jonathan, who just won last year Best Supporting Actor, was the fight liaison. He had played Short Round in the Temple of Doom stuff.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I really loved him.
Well, we've got somebody in the green room here. Let me bring them on. I believe they have a question for you. JG, how you doing, man?
Hi, thanks.
Hey, JG, how are you?
I'm doing great. I've enjoyed this stream. I just wanted to ask two brief questions. The first is, are there any X-Files episodes that didn't get made or they didn't get past the script phase that you would have liked to have seen made? Because, you know, I was thinking during this conversation about the script that Thomas Ligotti sent in. I think the episode was going to be called Crampton, but were there any episodes that didn't get made that you would have liked to have seen go past that initial phase and actually make it into the series?
You know, not that I recall. I know this one of the producers, Gabe Rotter, had a really good idea. It had some sort of based on that. It was like a fungus ants, zombie ants kind of, you know, that phenomena. And that was pretty good. But for the most part, if you had an idea, you did it because you had 20 some odd episodes to do. And we're not really allowed on a show. You're not really allowed to see. People get annoyed with us because you go, I got a script. Will you read it? And like, I'm not allowed to for their safety as well.
Right.
Because, you know, it's aliens and you inevitably might do something that's the same and you just slip, and they're just like, so the fact they keep scripts away. So if it was an idea, we had it, we did it from my memory.
I appreciate that. The other question I wanted to ask, and I'll hear your answer off air, but you know, it's wild now. I even know academics that will do analysis of the X-Files episodes and the themes in episodes like Humbug. I have a film critic friend, Kenneth Murr, who did a whole analysis of Millennium and, you know, existentialist themes. Do you think that stuff is a little bit over the top, or do you think there's value in that sort of academic looking at the themes in these shows that you worked on?
No, of course there's value, you know, and that's what I do. That's what I read, you know, but I won't. Jim Wong and I are coming from a human place. Like, hey, I want the audience to cry. What are they gonna? I want the audience to laugh. That's the only place I'm coming. I'm not that. Obviously, you've been listening to me for 2.5 hours. I'm not that smart, but I think my brother's doing stuff to circumvent what came before and then change the structure and stuff like that. But I didn't. But yes, I do. And when I read anything that praised us and might give us credit for thinking that we actually did that on purpose, it's great, but we're not that smart.
I'll let you go, but thanks, Piz, and I'm glad that you said that about you're trying to get the human element with the stuff you write, because I've said to people, you know, people will talk about the monsters and the alien mythology and X-Files, but I do think the heart of it is really the relationship between Mulder, Scully, even Mitch Pileggi's character. I think that's really what made the show. But thanks again.
Well, thank you,
JG. Thanks, buddy. So Alex's question was, he heard that you almost directed Don't Be Afraid of the
Oh.
Dark remake.
Okay, well that goes into a whole another Bob Weinstein episode. Which
Oh,
I
goodness.
think didn't he make it? Didn't Guillermo produce that?
Yes, he did. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. He did it. He's like, send this. We wrote a version because that movie was another one as a kid. I think it was like Kim Darby. It was a made-for-TV movie, and it was like, I love that movie, and it came up, and like, yeah, we wrote a version of it. It was set in Brooklyn. Bob read it. He's like, I love it. Send this to your AD up in Vancouver, and here we go. And then he called, and he's like, I don't want to make a creature feature. And so then we got together. Excuse me. He's like, can there be ghosts? What do you mean ghosts? There's like little monsters in the wall, and they drag the guy. No, I gotta have a ghost. I bought this ghost movie from Spain, and the trailer's really great. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll make a great movie, a trailer for this movie. So yes, the answer is yes. And I think I saw that script downstairs in a bin somewhere, but it didn't get made, obviously.
Well, how's the industry changed in your eyes over the years, and how do you see it changing in the future?
I don't know, man. That's a question of the day. It started before the strike, going on about the strike, and I don't see that the strike brought up a healthy resolution. And that sounds pessimistic, but you just don't have, I'm not finding, like, if you say, well, what about a movie like this? And you pitch a movie, or they go, well, that's an okay idea. And then they might go, and you'd had executives, did you ever see this movie called Black Christmas? It was a Canadian thing in the 70s. They would know.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, very honest, very recently, I was talking to an executive, and I mentioned the scene where Barry is abducted in Close Encounters, and I came to understand really quickly that he just didn't know that scene. He didn't really know that movie.
Right.
And so there's a whole, I think there's a tech-heavy influence on that level of executive who are first introduced to projects. Like, for example, going back hours ago when we talked, they were a little higher level, but when we said, you don't see death, those executives knew The Omen. And they go, oh yeah, we could do, oh, I get it. It worked before, we could do it here. Where now you don't have that frame of reference, that original. I used to be that the oldest movie a lot of people had seen was Pulp Fiction, and that's like even that. And so I don't know how that changes when you don't have people that have the love of it, like you do, and all your listeners do, that we have as love for this genre, or just go into the movies. That's not there. I don't know how I fix it.
Yeah, I always heard that, like, the easiest way to get an executive's ear is to say, well, it's like Speed meets the Terminator. Now today people are like,
oh, that's it. I'm gonna make that's a good movie. I'm gonna write that down.
But today, I mean, it'd be like, well, the what? I mean, that might not be a great example, because I mean, who doesn't know what Terminator is?
No, they don't. Or they've heard of it, but they've never seen it. Sorry, you're like, oh, I'm sorry I put this guy on my show because he's really depressed me. But
no, but I mean, it's. I think we're, you mentioned the strike. We have all this stuff. I've had screenwriters on, and they talk about how, they're going to have AI write these scripts, and then they're going to have us come in for half our pay and fix them up. So that's insane to me. Or like the extras are now CGI extras. Like, they're not even paying extras. We can just put them in.
Well, they don't have to put up with writers pushing back on notes. They don't have to pay them residuals, all those kind of things. And you can just, I feel there's certain stuff out there that an AI could write. Here's a formula: good guy, bad guy. Get your hero in a tree, throw rocks at him, he comes down. But you know, for me, it's like a movie like A King of Comedy. I don't see AI writing that. I don't see AI
No,
writing Harold and Maude. So we'll
no,
see.
no. Yeah, it's and then like is it this is probably a dumb question, but I mean, it seems like it's a lot more difficult to get projects off the ground now, especially movies, because the studios don't want to make the mid-level. They don't
Right.
want to make a $20 million movie that might make them 60. They want to make the next Mission Impossible or the next Oppenheimer, Barbie, whatever. That's why, like, people like David Lynch and John Waters, they went to TV or they went to streaming services.
Well, but
So
again, that's all, you know, what people need to know is that's marketing. Like, it's one thing to spend $50 million on a movie, but the decision to make that movie is based on, I'm going to need 75 to 100 million to market that 50 million. So now I'm up to 150 million. I have to break even on a $50 million movie that might appeal, the old, Seagal movies kind of box office. So it's all about marketing. And that's why David Lynch and those guys have gone, because they can make a $50 million movie or whatever it is, and 20, and they don't have to pay that exorbitant amount on Netflix, who really doesn't market that much.
Eerie Spirit wants to know, Glenn, you worked on the series The River. How was it working with Bruce Greenwood?
Bruce is a great actor who just like wanted me to go away.
Just let him do his thing, right?
He's a great actor, but it was like, I don't know, I was standing there and he's like, hey, what does it do this? Where do I go here? I'm like, oh, you got to go, it's over there. And he just kept going, hey, what do I do this? I'm like, it's right there. And I'm like, okay, I give up. And I don't know I don't know. But he's a great actor, and that was like a fascinating show. It was like, I don't know, we had like 8 to 15 cameras on every take because it was a found footage thing. And, got to go to Hawaii.
Hey, nothing wrong there. Actually, and we had a super chat from Bronson. He wanted to know what was your experience like working on Trick or Treat, but we kind of covered that a little early on in the stream, Bronson.
Go make sure you see the DVD when it comes out from.
Oh, somebody also asked earlier on if you contributed anything to that upcoming 4K.
I did an interview that was much shorter. I feel so much guilt for my son in Penn State, who I'm sure turned off hours ago. But I did an interview, behind the scenes or something.
Okay, so that's something to definitely look forward to.
Yeah, I think they have Charlie Martin Smith and Doug and everybody who was on the show is there, except Tony passed away.
Okay, this will be the last question, and then we'll call it a night here. Alex wanted to know about another unmade movie called The Watch. You're
ringing a bell, but I don't really know. You know what? I think that was a thing that Jim was more involved in. It's
okay.
It's ringing a bell, but I think that would be when you get Jim Wong on here. You ask him about that. Sorry, but that's my memory.
We'll reach out to Jim and let's get it together.
Yeah,
I think maybe we need a new Glen Morgan Jim Wong collaboration.
Those X-Files that just came out, we worked together.
Okay.
No, we're all, that's the thing. Like, I've never had a more amicable breakup. We just like went our separate ways, and I've never felt jealous about what he was doing, and he never felt jealous. No competition. It was just like still friends, and our families are close, and everything. It's all great.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, Glenn, thank you so much.
Sorry I went so long here. I swore.
No, God, no. Listen. The more information, the better. We eat that stuff up. You know what I mean? That's what we're here for. We want to hear the stories from the trenches, the good, the bad, the ugly. We want to hear it all. So.
Well, I'm saying my phone is vibrating, so all my friends are like, "Sorry, I had to get off. You were boring me in 30 minutes."
But no, this was great. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your candor. This was just phenomenal, man.
Well, thanks for having me. I really, it's a great community.
Yeah. Yeah. So, oh my goodness. Let me do a couple of shout outs here before we call it a night. Thank you, Entertainment Wizard. Thank you, Nico. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. This was a great this was a lot of fun. That's for sure. Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Yes.
Wait. I want to know, what was that? A bowling ball?
That's Phantasm, the spear. The
Oh,
spear
right. Oh, sorry. Oh, whatever. Okay. I'm going to horror movie jail. I know what that was. I just couldn't see.
Yeah, I've kept you too long.
Yeah,
long.
right. Yeah, I got to get to that bourbon that's sitting there.
Yes, you got that bourbon. Little
Yeah.
cheers to the bluegrass state here.
All right, that's right.
Yeah, but I really appreciate it, man. It's been a lot of fun. You're awesome. If you don't mind, after I'm gonna do my little spiel and we'll go off the air. If you don't mind hanging out for just a minute longer.
All right. I could be
great.
bombed by then, but cheers, everybody. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, thank you guys. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Nico, for the super chat. Thank you, Bronson, for the super chat. Thank you, Darren, for becoming a channel member. Much appreciated. Thank you all for hanging out. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you again real soon. Peace. Crap, that's the wrong outro. Look at me. I'm totally unprofessional here.
I won't do anything weird. I'll just sit there.
Okay, here's the right one.